Imagine flying over the Amazon when suddenly something below begins to move. A huge snake as thick as a car stretches for dozens of yards and seems to fill half the river. That is exactly how viral videos about the world's largest anaconda look. They get millions of views, but there is one problem. Almost all of them are fake. Why do these fakes perform so well? Because the Amazon truly is home to some of the biggest snakes on the planet. And for human imagination, that is still not enough. We want a monster the length of a river, the ancient 197-foot Yakimama from Legends that flips boats with a single move, even if only on a phone screen. Today, many commenters already say they can't tell whether a video is generated by an AI or actually real. That is why fact-checking is becoming necessary. The largest documented snake weighs 215 pounds and measures 17.1 feet in length. There are rumors of anacondas reaching up to 39 feet, but those claims were made without modern measurement standards, and scientists treat them with skepticism. So the next time you see a video where a snake covers half the width of the Amazon, it means the creator is using video generation tools very skillfully. In the quiet rolling hills of south-central France, something strange happened that still leaves experts scratching their heads. Between 1764 and 1767, a creature roamed the forests and fields of Gévaudan. Not just any predator, but something so strange, so relentless, that it quickly gained a legendary status. People described it as part wolf, part monster. Some claimed it was taller than a man's waist, with reddish fur, black streaks down its back, and teeth far too large for any normal canine. This wasn't just a case of a single rogue animal. The creature struck again and again, and witnesses began describing behavior that didn't quite match any known predator. It didn't fear gunfire, seemed to survive wounds that should have ended it, and displayed a level of intelligence that felt unnatural. It avoided traps, changed locations, and returned weeks later, often more aggressive than before. At the time, the King of France himself sent professional hunters to take down the beast. They brought rifles, dogs, entire teams. Wolves were shot and paraded through the towns, but the attacks kept coming. Locals began to suspect this wasn't a normal animal. Some whispered that it was a creature from the edge of myth, a shapeshifter, or even a cursed being. Others believed it had been bred or created, maybe even escaped from a secret menagerie. Modern theories have tried to pin it down. Maybe it was a lion that escaped from someone's private collection, or a mutated wolf. But those ideas fall short when you dig deeper. The creature moved in ways big cats don't, and no zoo or traveling circus ever reported a missing lion. Even more curious, some modern researchers discovered that the creature may have worked with a human. There were hints of someone guiding it, sightings of a figure nearby just before it attacked. If true, this opens a chilling possibility. Was the beast of Gévaudan a natural predator at all? Or was it controlled? Deep in the misty rainforests of Sumatra, trackers have followed prints that don't match any known animal, short, human-like, and spaced in a bipedal gait. Locals call the creature orang pendek, which means short person. But this isn't a legend passed down by elders alone. Modern explorers, scientists, and wildlife photographers have joined the search, and many walk away convinced that something is out there. Eyewitnesses describe a small humanoid, about 3 to 5 feet tall, covered in dark hair with powerful arms and an upright posture. It moves swiftly through dense jungle, vanishing before cameras can lock focus. What's fascinating is how consistent the reports are from indigenous Sumatran tribes to Dutch colonists, and even modern-day biologists. Footprints have been cast and analyzed. Hair samples have been collected and show no match with orangutans, gibbons, or any known species. Some experts suggest it could be a surviving relative of Homo floresiensis, the so-called hobbit species discovered on a nearby island. That ancient human stood about 3 feet tall and lived thousands of years ago, yet in Sumatra, descriptions line up uncannily well. The forest where it's said to live is one of the least explored places left on Earth. Endless valleys, untouched canopies, and remote regions that even satellites barely see. Perfect conditions for a hidden species to survive. While the mainstream science world still labels the orang pendek as a cryptid, a growing number of researchers argue it might be one of the last surviving pockets of archaic human relatives. In other words, we're not alone at the top of the evolutionary ladder. Not yet. In the heart of the Amazon, there are whispers of a towering creature that moves through the trees like a walking nightmare. Known as the Mapinguari, it's been described as a 7-foot-tall beast with matted fur, backward-facing feet, and a single glaring eye in the middle of its head. And the worst part? It smells so foul that even animals flee before it's seen. Local tribes across Brazil and Bolivia have talked about it for generations, not as myth, but as fact. Hunters return with stories of seeing the creature from a distance, always just far enough to doubt, but close enough to chill the blood. Some say it's a guardian of the forest. Others think it's something far older, left behind when the world was still wild and strange. Biologists have tried to explain the mapinguari away, suggesting it might be a misidentified sloth. But the theory doesn't hold up when you hear about the monstrous claws, the leathery face, or the bellowing growl that's been reported echoing through remote jungles. Some cryptozoologists believe it could be a ground sloth that never went extinct, a creature that lived alongside saber-toothed cats and mammoths. If so, it would have had thousands of years to adapt and hide. A strange coincidence? Satellite images of the Amazon have revealed areas so densely forested that humans have never stepped there. And within those green shadows, life continues undisturbed, maybe even prehistoric life. Scientists studying the area have found completely new animal species just in the past few years. So if the mapinguari does exist, it wouldn't be the first time the Amazon kept a secret this big. In the dense forests of the Philippines, tall shadows sometimes move without a sound. Locals say it's not wind or wildlife, it's the kapre. Towering up to 9 feet, this hairy, man-like figure is said to live in ancient balete or mango trees, watching travelers and occasionally revealing itself to those who wander too close. Unlike some creatures, the kapre isn't described as outright hostile. Instead, it watches, sometimes following people, sometimes moving objects just out of reach, like a mischievous guardian of the old world. What makes it even more unsettling is its supposed habit of puffing on a cigar made of glowing embers, filling the night air with the scent of burning leaves and something else. Not quite natural. For centuries, rural families have built homes on stilts or avoided certain trees entirely, all to avoid disturbing the kapre. Entire villages report the same experiences: heavy footsteps, deep laughter coming from the dark, and the eerie sensation of being watched even when no one's around. Skeptics say it's folklore, but some believe it's more than that, perhaps a remnant of early human ancestors or a nocturnal primate species never cataloged by science. Reports always come from remote, less developed areas, which still cling to ancient beliefs and maybe ancient realities. Interestingly, even visitors from outside the country have reported similar sightings without knowing anything about the legend beforehand. A few swear they saw something move up in the trees that wasn't human, but also wasn't quite animal. There's a quiet theory that the kapre is tied to something even older than history, a relic of a world that still lingers in the places we rarely look. A world that might not want to be found. Just outside of Cincinnati, near the small town of Loveland, Ohio, something strange has been seen lurking near the riverbanks. Witnesses describe a humanoid creature around 4 feet tall, with leathery skin, bulging eyes, and distinctly frog-like features. It walks on 2 legs and has startled police officers, drivers, and locals for decades. The first major sighting happened in the 1970s, when 2 separate police officers trained observers encountered the creature on different nights. One even drew his firearm and fired at it, claiming it leapt over a guardrail and vanished into the water. That incident wasn't dismissed as fantasy. A report was filed, and to this day, it remains part of Ohio's unexplained case files. What gives the frogman its staying power is how grounded the sightings are. They don't come from urban legends or vague rumors. They're specific, physical, and eerily consistent. Most reports involve the creature standing upright near bridges or creeks, often frozen in place before fleeing into the shadows. Some researchers have speculated it could be a mutant amphibian or an undiscovered aquatic species that adapted to walk on land. Others believe it may be tied to Native American folklore of water spirits or shapeshifters that once inhabited the region. Today, Loveland embraces the legend. But underneath the fun is something more curious. No hoaxes were ever confirmed. No suits or props ever found. For a cryptid this bizarre, the trail remains unusually clean and the questions stay unanswered. In the icy black waters near Antarctica, far from any mainland, Japanese whaling crews have reported seeing something massive, pale white, humanoid, and silent. They call it the ningen, meaning human in Japanese. But this is no ordinary man. Witnesses describe it as over 60 feet long, with a vaguely human face, long arms, and no visible bones, like a ghostly titan gliding through the sea. The first reports began surfacing from crew journals in the late 20th century. What followed were photos, video clips, and sonar readings that hinted at something big moving just beneath the surface. Some of the footage shows a white shape shifting through the deep, but never clearly enough to confirm what it is. What separates the Ningen from other sea monsters is its shape. It doesn't look like a fish. It doesn't swim like a whale. Its form is far too symmetrical, too human-like, and that's what makes it so disturbing. Some cryptozoologists think it could be an undiscovered deep-sea invertebrate or an evolved giant squid with adaptive camouflage. Others suggest it might be a biological anomaly created by the extreme pressures and isolation of the polar oceans. But then there's the other theory, the one whispered in late-night forums and conspiracy threads, that the Ningen might not be natural at all, that it could be a remnant from some hidden project or something ancient, awakened by the melting polar caps. Especially since sightings tend to cluster around government-restricted marine zones. No one's captured it. No one's brought back a body. Just blurry photos, strange sonar blips, and the chilling reports of men who swear they saw something that doesn't belong to our world. Across South Africa and neighboring regions, many still believe in a creature that isn't seen, but is deeply feared. It's called the Tikoloshe, a small humanoid being said to have shriveled features, sharp teeth, and an eerie ability to vanish. The fear is so deep-rooted that many people raise their beds on bricks to keep it from reaching them during sleep. The Tikoloshe is believed to appear at night, often invisible to most, but able to cause misfortune, illness, or strange paralysis. Descriptions vary slightly, but nearly all accounts agree on a few details. It's short, fast, and associated with dark rituals or spiritual unrest. Anthropologists have tried to explain it away as sleep paralysis or a cultural expression of anxiety. But the consistency of sightings across regions, tribes, and decades hints at something more. Interestingly, in some areas, security footage and wildlife cameras have picked up fleeting shapes that resemble a crawling or crouching figure just at the edge of the frame. Nothing conclusive, but enough to raise eyebrows. What adds to the mystery is that the creature is often described as both physical and supernatural, able to pass through walls yet leave behind footprints. Some call it a poltergeist in flesh. Others think it may be a primal being that science hasn't acknowledged. Whatever the truth, belief in the Tikoloshe is strong enough to shape entire household customs, even in modern cities. That's not superstition. That's something deeper. Something people live with even if they don't always talk about it. They wash ashore without warning. Huge, stinking, shapeless blobs of flesh, some the size of a small car, others stretching over 30 feet. They're called globsters, and they've appeared on coastlines all over the world: Tasmania, Newfoundland, Chile, even California. No bones, no visible eyes, no clear head. Just strands of rubbery tissue and a smell that can't be forgotten. What makes them so strange is that no two are ever alike. Some appear covered in hair or fur-like fibers. Others seem to pulse or ooze oil. Marine biologists have tried to identify them. Many globsters are written off as rotting whale carcasses or giant squid remains. But not all of them fit that explanation. The most famous case, the Chilean blob of 2003, was originally thought to be a sea monster. DNA tests years later hinted at whale tissue, but only after the sample had degraded. And some findings remain totally inconclusive. Globsters keep turning up. The ocean floor is still mostly unexplored, and what lives down there might be stranger than anything we've cataloged so far. Some cryptozoologists believe these are failed mutations, the remains of deep-sea creatures pulled up by currents or underwater quakes. Others think they're signs of something bigger, unknown leviathans dying off due to human activity or environmental shifts. Either way, they show us one clear fact: the ocean still holds things we are not ready to explain. This image has stunned the internet. Armed soldiers surrounding what looks like a humanoid creature, pale, swollen limbs, stretched skin, and a face that doesn't quite look human. The photo claims to be leaked military footage from a remote operation, but no one knows where. No one knows when. Some say it's just a prop from an abandoned film set. Others believe it's something real, something the public was never meant to see. Whatever it is, it doesn't look fake. And it definitely doesn't look human. In 1954, something washed ashore on Canvey Island, England, that looked like it came from another world. About 3 feet long, reddish and leathery skinned, it had thick limbs, a vaguely human face, and gills. Local authorities collected the body, and then, just as suddenly, it vanished. Less than a year later, another similar carcass appeared. This time it was 5 feet long, with the same unusual features. Again, there was no clear conclusion. Some reports said it had legs designed for walking, not swimming. Others claimed its body had elements not found in any known marine species. Though scientists at the time dismissed the findings, no thorough autopsy was ever publicly released. And since then, rumors have swirled that both creatures were quietly taken for study, and that the public was kept in the dark. Theories range from a mutated anglerfish to an amphibious prototype from a military experiment gone wrong. Others connect it to strange seismic activity that occurred just offshore. Around the same time, maybe something was disturbed, something that wasn't meant to reach the surface. Today, the Canvey Island monster remains a mystery buried in local history and scattered headlines. No clear answers, no follow-up discoveries, just the unsettling image of something not quite human but not quite animal, either washing up where it absolutely didn't belong. And that's the part that lingers if it happened once. What's to say it won't happen again? In 1973, the small town of Enfield, Illinois, was rocked by one of the strangest creature reports in American history. It wasn't just a shadow or a howl in the night. People saw it. Police reports were filed. Shotguns were fired. And what they described defied belief: a short, muscular creature with 3 legs, glowing red eyes, and tiny arms ending in claws. It began when a young boy's screams brought his family racing to the front door. There, just outside, stood a crouching figure staring back at them. Moments later, the creature bounded away, not walked, but bounced like some kind of malfunctioning robot. That same night, another local reported the exact same thing. This time, it scratched at their door before vanishing into the dark fields. The triple-legged design wasn't a metaphor. Witnesses insisted it had a 3rd leg centered in its chest area, used for balance or speed. It left strange 3-toed tracks in the mud that didn't match any animal native to the region. Authorities investigated but found nothing. No costume, no prankster, no explanation. The town went quiet again, but only after several more sightings over the following weeks. Skeptics tried to link it to an escaped kangaroo or a wild ape. But that doesn't explain the tracks, the eye glow, or the bizarre way it moved. Some cryptozoologists believe it could have been a mutated being, something deformed by environmental exposure or even interdimensional in origin. That 3rd leg, so oddly placed and functionally bizarre, continues to stump even the most open-minded researchers. Whatever it was, the Enfield horror came and went without a trace. And the people who saw it, they've never changed their story. In the heat and humidity of South Carolina's lowlands, something strange slithered out of the shadows in 1988. Near the Scape Ore Swamp, a teenager changing a flat tire late at night was ambushed by what he described as a 7-foot-tall creature covered in green scales, glowing eyes, and long claws that tore through metal like it was paper. The incident sparked panic and more sightings. Over the next few weeks, others came forward: farmers, drivers, even a couple of local deputies. They all described the same thing: a bipedal reptilian figure, fast, aggressive, and unlike anything native to the area. Tire marks and claw scratches were found on the teenager's car. Police launched an investigation, but no explanation ever surfaced. No lizard, alligator, or bear matches the physical description or behavior. Over time, the creature took on local myth status, but many still believe it's real. Some think it's a mutated reptile, the result of chemical runoff or secret experiments in nearby swamps. Others point to Native American legends of swamp spirits or serpent gods as possible routes for the sightings. What makes this case hard to ignore is the sheer number of consistent reports within a short time frame, all describing the same grotesque lizard-man hybrid. It wasn't just whispers, it made the news, and state agencies even filed reports, though quietly. Even decades later, the lizard man hasn't completely disappeared. Tracks are occasionally found. Shadows move along the water's edge. And to this day, locals know better than to walk Scape Ore Swamp alone at night. In the spring of 1977, in the quiet town of Dover, Massachusetts, 3 separate teenagers, none of them connected, reported the same unexplainable thing within a 48-hour period. It was small, pale, and had an enormous head with glowing orange eyes, long fingers, no mouth, and smooth, hairless skin. It didn't walk. It crawled fast across stone walls and wooded paths, and it left behind a chill no one could shake. They called it the Dover Demon, and for a moment it became national news. Police took the teens seriously. Their sketches matched with uncanny accuracy, and none of them had spoken to each other before the reports. The sightings happened in different locations around town near bridges, woods, and quiet roads, but all fit the same time frame and description. The creature didn't seem aggressive, just out of place, silent, watching, and then gone. Some compared it to the Greys of alien lore, though it didn't behave like a typical extraterrestrial encounter. Others linked it to folklore about forest spirits or elemental beings. Still, skeptics dismissed it as a misidentified animal or a group prank. But even after thorough questioning, none of the witnesses ever backed down. What's more, no other creature matches the description. Not a raccoon, not an owl, not anything from the Massachusetts wilderness. And after those 2 nights, the Dover demon vanished as quickly as it appeared, never to be seen again. It didn't attack. It didn't leave a mark. It just showed up, stared, and disappeared. Almost like it was studying us. It sounds like a joke until you actually see the footage. Back in 2007, a Fresno homeowner reviewed their security camera and found something beyond explanation. A pair of white stick-like legs walking awkwardly across the lawn with no torso, no arms, and no head. Just 2 long limbs, moving with a gliding, eerie motion. Since then, the creature or whatever it is has become known as the Fresno Nightcrawler. It didn't just appear once. Similar figures have been caught on video in Yosemite National Park and other parts of California. They all look the same, floating or waddling, seemingly made of fabric or mist like something from a dream. Skeptics try to explain it away as puppetry or CGI, but the footage has been analyzed multiple times, and while no verdict is conclusive, most agree there's no clear evidence of editing, wires, or digital effects. What's on camera was actually there. Some believe the Nightcrawlers are alien reconnaissance units. Others say they're nature spirits or dimensional travelers. Their legs resemble stilt walkers or even traditional Native American carvings, leading some to think their ancient symbols come to life. What makes them so unsettling isn't violence or aggression, it's the simplicity. They move with a strange calm, like they're just passing through our world. They don't respond. They don't chase. They just exist, and that might be the weirdest part of all. No one knows where they go or where they come from. But if your night cam ever catches something tall, thin, and walking without a body, maybe you've met them too. Sometimes the strangest creatures don't crawl out of the forest, they wash up right at our feet. In 2008, on a sunny New York beach in Montauk, a grotesque carcass appeared. It had no fur, a bloated body, bird-like claws, and a curved beak where its snout should have been. Photos of the so-called Montauk monster went viral instantly. Scientists scrambled to explain was it a raccoon, a dog, even a turtle without a shell? None of those quite matched. And what made the whole thing even stranger was its location just miles from Plum Island, a secretive animal research facility known for experimenting with contagious diseases. Coincidence? Some aren't so sure. The body disappeared, just like that. No public DNA test, no follow-up. Some say it was taken, others claim it was buried. But to this day, all we have is that single photo and a mystery that refuses to go away. Thousands of miles away in the bone-dry Atacama Desert of Chile, something even more bizarre turned up a 6-inch long skeleton with a perfectly formed skull, slanted eyes, and hard bones that resembled a child's. Or something entirely different. Named Atta, the tiny figure was discovered in 2003 in a leather pouch behind an abandoned church. It looked like something straight out of science fiction, a miniature humanoid with 10 ribs instead of 12, and an elongated skull. Theories exploded. Alien child? Government experiment? Genetic anomaly? Even with modern DNA sequencing, many questions remain. Researchers concluded it had human DNA, but the deformities were extreme and rare. Too rare. Almost unnatural. What ties these two together is simple bodies that don't belong, discovered in plain sight, then explained away with answers that never quite satisfy. Just enough truth to calm the surface, but underneath, the mystery only deepens. In the icy wilderness of northern Siberia, a team of mammoth tusk hunters stumbled upon something they couldn't believe was real. Peeking out from a cliff edge of thawing permafrost was a shock of strawberry blonde hair, not fur caught on a branch, but an entire baby woolly mammoth, perfectly preserved, curled as if still asleep. They named her Yuka, and what they found changed everything we thought we knew about Ice Age life. Yuka wasn't a skeleton. She still had skin, muscle, internal organs, even traces of blood. Her reddish blonde fur was still soft to the touch in some areas, and most surprising of all, her brain was intact. That's right, a brain that had been frozen solid for nearly 40,000 years, preserved in nature's own cryogenic vault. It wasn't fossilized, it was flesh. That's how cold, how remote, and how untouched the place she was found really is. What made Yucca so important wasn't just how complete she was. It was how young she had been when she died around 6 to 8 years old. Mammoths, like modern elephants, grew up slowly. Yucca still had her baby teeth, and scientists were able to study how her bones were forming, how her fur grew in layers depending on the seasons, even how her body was adapting to the extreme Siberian cold. It was like looking through a frozen time capsule into the life of one of the Ice Age's most iconic creatures. Yucca was discovered in 2010, but her preservation was so extraordinary that scientists around the world have been examining her for over a decade. They've sequenced parts of her DNA, studied her gut contents, and even attempted to extract samples of liquid blood. No, they're not cloning her Jurassic Park style, at least not yet, but what she's taught us is invaluable. Through her, we're learning how mammoths thrived in cold, how they aged, how their biology functioned, and what environmental stress they endured before extinction. And get this, her discovery site was so remote that it was only accessible during a short window in summer, when the permafrost melted just enough to expose a few inches of ground. Without that exact moment, she might have stayed hidden for another 10,000 years. That's how fragile and rare these finds are. Yucca's now housed in a climate-controlled lab where researchers continue their work, and her story's made its way into museums and documentaries. She's become a symbol of prehistoric preservation, not because she was famous when alive, but because she came back to tell a story no one thought would ever be heard. Deep in the Siberian permafrost, scientists uncovered something that shouldn't have survived even a single winter. Two Ice Age cave lion cubs, so well preserved you can still see their whiskers. The first cub, named Uyan, was found by a local mammoth tusk hunter. A year later, another was discovered just a few feet away. This second cub, nicknamed Spartak, looked like he had fallen asleep in the snow just yesterday. Soft fur, paw pads, tiny claws, even the tissue in his nose was intact. Cave lions were apex predators during the Ice Age. Bigger than today's African lions and covered in thick fur, they roamed the mammoth steppes of Eurasia and hunted giant prey. Until these discoveries, we had bones, cave drawings, and a few scraps of hair. But suddenly, we were staring at Ice Age cubs in near-perfect condition, preserved by nature's freezer for over 28,000 years. One of the most fascinating details was how small the cubs were just a few weeks old when they died. CT scans revealed their internal organs, undeveloped teeth, and fragile bones. Scientists think they were killed in a sudden cave collapse or possibly by permafrost flooding, which sealed them off before decay could begin. In a way, it's that tragedy that gave us the chance to meet them tens of thousands of years later. These cubs gave researchers rare insights into how prehistoric lions were born, how fast they grew, and what traits separated them from modern lions. DNA tests confirmed they belonged to Panthera spalea, the now extinct cave lion species. This species was once the king of the northern world, but few expected it to show up this clearly, this untouched. The discovery sparked global interest, with museums clamoring to display them. But for scientists, the focus was the data. Fur patterns, isotopes in their teeth, muscle composition, all helping to map out their diet, lifestyle, and habitat. It's like getting the full blueprint of a predator lost to time. And if there are cubs this well-preserved, what else might be out there under the next ridge of melting frost? In the windswept Arctic tundra of Siberia's Yana River Valley, a discovery made in 2011 stunned paleontologists. A fully intact steppe bison, buried beneath the permafrost for nearly 9,000 years. Unlike many Ice Age carcasses, this one wasn't just bones or scraps. It was an entire animal, muscle and organs included, preserved so well that researchers could study the contents of its stomach. Steppe bison were once among the most common megafauna in the northern hemisphere, roaming the grasslands from Alaska to Europe. They were massive, shaggy, and built for survival in cold extremes. But most of what we knew came from skeletons or rock carvings. That changed with this discovery. The bison, later nicknamed Blue Babe because of the bluish tint its frozen hide developed, was preserved in near-perfect condition, right down to its heart and lungs. Scientists immediately set to work scanning and sampling every part of the animal. What it had eaten, dried grasses and sedges, told them what the environment looked like just before the Holocene warm-up began. Even the parasite eggs in its intestines helped reconstruct ancient ecosystems. And because the brain was preserved, researchers gained rare insights into Ice Age neurobiology. One of the most surprising finds was how quickly the bison had frozen. It likely died in early winter, either from injury or collapse, and before scavengers could touch it, the temperature plunged. With no thawing and refreezing, the body essentially mummified in the soil. The surrounding permafrost acted like a vault, shielding the body from bacteria and oxygen for millennia. This wasn't just a paleontological jackpot, it was a window into how animals lived, grazed, and survived in a colder, wilder world. The data gathered from this bison has been used in climate models, conservation studies, even comparisons with living bison species. It's one thing to study extinction from afar, it's another to meet it face to face, still frozen, eyes closed, in a pose of quiet collapse. In the quiet village of Tumat in northeastern Siberia, a family out searching for mammoth tusks came across what looked like a clump of dark fur in the dirt. But as they dug deeper, they realized they were staring at the snout of a puppy, one that hadn't drawn a breath in over 12,000 years. Not long after, a second puppy was found nearby. These weren't modern dogs. They were Ice Age canines, frozen solid, with teeth, fur, and even brains fully preserved. The Tumat dogs are among the most complete ancient canine remains ever discovered. Their preservation is so extraordinary that researchers were able to take full 3D scans of their skulls, extract tissue from their inner ears, and even study the structures of their tiny, undeveloped teeth. One pup was estimated to be just 3 months old when it died. What makes the Tumat dogs particularly fascinating is their position in dog evolution. DNA studies revealed they were close relatives of the first domesticated dogs. This places them at a crucial moment in history, the transition from wild wolves to human companions. These pups may have lived in camps with ancient Siberian hunters, scavenging scraps or being raised alongside people. Or they may have still been wild, testing the edge of that connection. Even their fur tells a story. Samples revealed different shades and textures that suggest natural camouflage for snowy terrain. And thanks to the preserved brain tissue, scientists got one of the first direct looks at the brain structure of Ice Age dogs. That data could help explain how behaviors evolved from hunting instincts to social bonds with humans. Their deaths remain a mystery. Some believe they were trapped in a mudslide or collapsed burrow that froze instantly. Others think they might have drowned during a seasonal flood. Either way, the speed at which they froze is what preserved them so well, better than almost any prehistoric dog ever found. Today, the Tumat pups are studied in specialized labs, and images of them have gone viral around the world. They've been compared to sleeping pets curled up mid-nap. But their real legacy is scientific. These tiny Ice Age dogs are helping fill in the biggest missing chapter of human-animal history, how wolves became our first allies. In the heart of Yakutia's remote permafrost, a hunter on his usual rounds caught sight of something odd sticking out from the frozen riverbank. It looked like a twisted piece of driftwood at first until he noticed the horn. What he had found wasn't just a bone or fossil, it was a nearly complete woolly rhinoceros, preserved with fur, skin, and even internal organs, resting in the frozen ground where it had lain undisturbed for around 50,000 years. This was no adult. It was a juvenile, small enough to suggest it had died early in life, yet complete enough to give scientists a full look at what these ancient animals looked like before they reached their massive size. The horn was still attached dark, curved, and surprisingly intact. Its thick, shaggy coat was still visible in patches, offering clues to how these animals stayed warm in an Ice Age environment where temperatures regularly dropped below 50 degrees Celsius. Woolly rhinos once roamed across vast parts of Europe and Asia. They were covered in dense fur with a large hump above their shoulders and a front horn that could grow several feet long. Despite their size and strength, they disappeared roughly 10,000 years ago. But thanks to this young specimen, researchers could study everything from the shape of its nasal cavity, designed for warming cold air, to the bacteria preserved in its gut. Its final moments were likely quick. Some think the rhino may have drowned or fallen through thin ice and froze before decomposition could begin. Whatever happened, it preserved the animal in astonishing condition. Tissue samples, blood vessel fragments, even muscle fiber patterns were retrieved. Scientists have called it the most complete woolly rhino ever found in the region. Even more intriguing, its discovery site is close to where woolly mammoths and prehistoric bison have also been recovered, suggesting this area may have been a kind of ice age crossroads, where species once thrived before the planet warmed. The rhino's find hasn't just added a specimen to the fossil record. It's reshaping how we understand this cold-adapted giant's biology and extinction. Most Ice Age creatures we've found are giants, mammoths, rhinos, saber-toothed predators. But this next one is a lot smaller. In fact, it could fit in your hand. Discovered by ivory hunters near the village of Belaya Gora in northeastern Siberia, a small, delicate bird was pulled from the frozen earth. It wasn't a fossil. It still had feathers. The colors were muted but visible soft browns and creams with traces of black across the wings. This bird had been dead for 46,000 years. It was identified as a horned lark, a species still alive today. But this particular one was special. It likely belonged to a now extinct Ice Age subspecies. The preservation was incredible: skin, feathers, beak, even the tiny eyelids were intact. This wasn't a skeleton, this was a whole bird, frozen mid-flight through history. What made this discovery so surprising was its condition. Small animals are rarely found intact in the permafrost. Their fragile bodies decay too fast or get torn apart by scavengers. But somehow, this lark escaped both. Scientists believe it may have died in a sudden landslide or snow collapse, then froze instantly. That quick freeze turned it into a perfectly preserved snapshot of ancient life. Genetic studies from the bird revealed valuable information. By comparing its DNA to modern horned larks, researchers could track how the species evolved and how it adapted to changing climates. The feather structure also showed what kind of environment it lived in: open tundra, windy plains, and sparse vegetation. It's a reminder that survival in the Ice Age wasn't just about brute strength or size. It was also about adaptation, timing, and sometimes luck. And thanks to this little bird, we now have direct evidence of what that era's skies looked like, not just full of giant beasts below, but dotted with fragile, feathered survivors soaring over the tundra. In 1901, long before modern lab tools and DNA sequencing, a group of Russian explorers stumbled upon a mammoth frozen into a cliff near the Beresovka River. What they pulled from the permafrost shocked the world. This wasn't just a tusk or bone, it was an entire woolly mammoth, legs tucked under its body, trunk curled inward as if frozen in the middle of a steppe. It was so well preserved it still had grass between its teeth. The Beresovka mammoth remains one of the best preserved adult mammoths ever found. When scientists performed the autopsy, they discovered undigested food in its stomach: herbs, grasses, and mosses that still retained their structure. This allowed researchers to identify exactly what it had been eating in the final hours of its life. Some of that food isn't even common in the region anymore, offering a glimpse into how much the local ecosystem has changed over thousands of years. What made this mammoth story even stranger were the injuries found on its body. Its front leg was broken, the ribs were cracked. One side of its skull had trauma. It looked like the animal had either fallen or been crushed by something heavy just before freezing. But what kept scientists up at night wasn't just the injuries, it was how fast it had to have frozen. For the stomach contents to be that intact, the drop in temperature had to be nearly instantaneous. The mammoth's tissue was so well preserved that early researchers even attempted taste tests. Yes, they actually cooked and sampled small pieces of thawed meat. The verdict? Tough and extremely unpleasant. Thankfully, today's scientists focus on the data instead. The Beresovka mammoth has provided insights into climate shifts, Ice Age flora, and megafauna extinction patterns. And for more than a century, it's remained a symbol of permafrost preservation. Frozen mid-motion, grass in its mouth, it's as if time simply hit pause on one of the Ice Age's most iconic animals. A pause that lasted over 39,000 years. In the frozen shallows off Antarctica's coast, researchers encountered a creature partially entombed in ice, its head exposed, jaws packed with unusually large conical teeth. Initial analysis ruled out known pinnipeds or fish species. The skin, dark and leathery, showed traits of deep-diving animals, yet the dentition didn't match any cataloged predator. Some suggested it might be a previously unknown species of ancient leopard seal, or even a rare survivor from a long-extinct lineage. DNA sampling was delayed due to the extreme conditions, but the find sparked renewed interest in what lies beneath Antarctica's isolated, ice-covered waters. Forget everything you know about modern beavers. The ones living today are cute, industrious little dam builders. Now imagine one the size of a black bear. That's the giant beaver Castoroides ohioensis, a prehistoric creature that roamed North America during the Ice Age. In the frozen swamps and ancient riverbeds of Alaska and Canada, researchers have uncovered partial remains of these enormous rodents, including a few teeth and skull fragments pulled straight from icy ground layers. The biggest one stretched over 7 feet long and weighed up to 200 pounds. They didn't build dams like their modern cousins, at least not in the same way. Their teeth weren't chisel-shaped for gnawing wood, but more like large curved wedges. This suggests they may have grazed on soft vegetation rather than felling trees. So while the modern beaver is an architect, its ancient cousin may have been more of a slow-moving grazer, just huge. Some of the best preserved specimens have come from cold, marshy environments, where organic matter stayed frozen and untouched. In one case, a nearly complete skull was pulled from a frozen peat bog, offering a close-up look at just how massive this rodent's head really was. Its brain case was relatively small, but the jaws? Massive, designed for serious chewing power. These beavers lived alongside other Ice Age giants, mastodons, mammoths, saber-toothed cats. They probably weren't aggressive, but their sheer size would have made them hard to mess with. And just like many of their megafauna neighbors, they vanished roughly 10,000 years ago, likely due to a mix of climate change and habitat loss as glaciers retreated. The frozen remains of the giant beaver give us more than just shock value. They help paleontologists understand how ecosystems functioned during the Pleistocene, how plant life fed enormous herbivores, and how wetland animals adapted to extreme cold. And yes, they've become a bit of a pop culture oddity. After all, a beaver the size of a grizzly is hard to forget. In 2018, while walking near the Terektiak River in Yakutia, a local resident spotted something strange poking out of the thawing earth. It was covered in fur, yellowed by time and frost, and far too large to be what it first appeared. As the ice chipped away, it became clear this was no modern wolf. What he'd found was a detached, fully preserved, 40,000-year-old wolf head, still wrapped in skin and fur, complete with fangs, tongue, and even brain tissue. This Ice Age predator's head was massive, nearly 16 inches long, making it about 50% bigger than that of today's largest wolves. And it wasn't fossilized. It still had muscle, blood vessels, and soft tissue. It had been frozen shortly after death and locked away in the permafrost ever since. No one had ever found anything quite like it before. A full-sized, severed predator head from the Pleistocene, preserved in such eerie detail that it looked like it could snarl any moment. What caused the head to separate from the body remains a mystery. There's no evidence of cutting tools or scavenger damage. Some scientists suggest that seasonal flooding or landslides may have torn the carcass apart before it froze. Others think it could have been an ancient predator's leftovers. Whatever the case, the way the head was sealed in ice kept it in pristine condition. Genetic testing revealed that this was not just a regular wolf. It belonged to an extinct lineage that branched off before modern wolves and dogs developed. The skull structure showed a shorter snout and more robust features, suggesting it may have been a cold, adapted apex hunter, capable of taking down large prey like musk oxen and reindeer. Some even speculated that it could have belonged to a now vanished giant wolf species. What really stunned researchers, though, was the brain. Scans showed intact neural tissue, the first time such a brain had been recovered from an Ice Age carnivore. That's opened up possibilities for understanding ancient predator behavior, instincts, and how brains evolved in response to extreme environments. It may not sound glamorous, but what Ice Age animals left behind in the snow is one of the most valuable keys to unlocking their ancient world. We're talking about frozen dung perfectly preserved in Arctic permafrost for tens of thousands of years. And inside those icy droppings, a full record of what these giant creatures ate, where they roamed, what parasites they carried, and even fragments of their DNA. From Alaska to Siberia, researchers have discovered megafaunal coprolites, fossilized excrement from mammoths, woolly rhinos, bison, and even giant ground sloths. Thanks to the freezing conditions, these aren't just dried-out fossils. Many still contain undigested plant matter, pollen grains, parasite eggs, and microbial life. Some even smell faintly earthy when thawed, as if they'd only been left behind a few weeks ago. Scientists analyze these samples using powerful microscopes and chemical testing. What they find tells a vivid story. A single dung sample can reveal whether a mammoth was grazing on steppe grasses or browsing in woody shrubs, whether it had seasonal migrations or what the local environment looked like right before extinction hit. Some cases, DNA from plants and gut microbes preserved in the dung allow scientists to rebuild entire food webs from the Ice Age. In one incredible case, researchers found dung samples frozen in a Yukon cave that still contained the spores of Ice Age fungi, a snapshot of prehistoric soil life. In another, mammoth dung helped scientists confirm that these animals carried loads of undigested seeds, helping spread vegetation across the landscape like furry farmers. And it's not just about food. Frozen dung also gives insights into the health of these animals. Parasite eggs found in the samples show which diseases were common, while stress hormones trapped in the fecal matter can hint at droughts, hunger, or climate stress. It's non-invasive science, but deeply revealing. So yes, ancient poop is now one of the hottest fields in Ice Age research. Entire labs are dedicated to studying it. Museums feature it in exhibitions. And if you've seen that clip where someone jokes about cloning a mammoth from dung DNA, well, they're not entirely wrong. There's a goldmine of genetic material inside each frozen pile, just waiting to be sequenced. It might not look pretty under glass, but this humble frozen legacy from the Pleistocene is one of the richest sources of information we have about a world long gone and a past that's slowly thawing back into view. This isn't a creature from a movie. It's not CGI. It's real and it's alive. The coelacanth, once thought to have vanished with the dinosaurs, came crashing back into reality in the most unexpected way. For over 65 million years, it was considered extinct. Only its fossilized bones told the story of its existence. Until in 1938, a fisherman near South Africa hauled something ancient out of the water, something no one had seen alive before. Thick, armor-like scales, leg-like fins, eyes that seemed to have seen things humans never could. This fish looked like it had swum straight out of a prehistoric ocean. It wasn't just a rediscovery, it was a reset button for what science thought it knew about extinction. The coelacanth is a survivor from deep time, over 400 million years old as a species. That's older than dinosaurs, older than birds, older than trees. While life on land was just beginning to crawl out of the water, this fish was already patrolling the depths. And somehow, through every mass extinction, it held on. What saved it? Depth. The coelacanth lives thousands of feet below the surface, in dark volcanic caves off the coasts of places like Madagascar and Indonesia. Its world is almost untouched by light, unreachable by casual divers. But here's where it gets even stranger. The coelacanth hasn't changed much at all. Its DNA reveals that it's barely evolved in hundreds of millions of years. It didn't need to. The design was already near perfect for the deep ocean. It's a biological time capsule, offering researchers an unfiltered look into a lost world. The rediscovery of the coelacanth wasn't just about a fish. It was a reminder that Earth still has secrets, waiting in the dark. While satellites scan the skies and drones explore Mars, there are still creatures on our own planet that we barely understand. This wasn't a comeback. The coelacanth never left. We just hadn't looked deep enough. High in the mist-drenched forests of Sulawesi, Indonesia, a tiny creature with enormous eyes and a ghost-like presence blinked back into existence after nearly a century of silence. The pygmy tarsier had vanished from view in the 1920s. For decades, the only trace of its existence came from a few museum specimens. Scientists were convinced it was extinct, until a research team trapped one over 80 years later at 7,000 feet above sea level. Barely the size of a tennis ball, this nocturnal primate looks like something out of a fantasy film. It's got fur as soft as moss, fingers like twigs, and eyes so large they make up nearly half its skull. Unlike most primates, the pygmy tarsier doesn't swing or walk, it leaps. It uses its powerful hind legs to bounce between branches with pinpoint accuracy, almost like a living rubber band. The rediscovery in 2008 wasn't just luck. It required weeks of grueling hikes through thick, moss-covered terrain and the placement of hundreds of traps baited with live crickets. When the team finally spotted those massive glowing eyes in the dark, they knew this wasn't a myth. It was real. Unlike other tarsiers, the pygmy tarsier is nearly silent. It communicates using ultrasonic frequencies, completely beyond human hearing. Its teeth are sharp, its grooming claws are oddly shaped, and it's one of the most ancient primates still alive today. Every detail of its biology reads like a message from the past. But even now, it's one of the least understood primates on Earth. Only a few individuals have ever been observed. They spend most of their time clinging to mossy trees at night, feeding on insects and avoiding the outside world. Researchers still don't know how many survive, if any. The forests it depends on are shrinking, which means the next chapter of its story is still unwritten. The pygmy tarsier reminds us that even in the age of satellites and global tracking, some creatures still prefer to remain shadows. And sometimes, rediscovering a species isn't just about science. It's about earning the right to enter their world. So, it was nicknamed the tree lobster, a massive insect about the size of a human hand, and it was once really common on Lord Howe Island in the South Pacific. But after rats were introduced to the island back in 1918, the population was wiped out within just a few years. By the 1920s, the stick insect was officially declared extinct. Scientists believed it was gone forever. Then, in 2001, 2 Australian researchers scaled the jagged cliffs of Ball's Pyramid, which is this towering volcanic spire rising out of the ocean about 14 miles from Lord Howe. There, on a narrow ledge surrounded by darkness, they found it. 2 insects clinging to a lone shrub in the moonlight, alive. The Lord Howe Island stick insect is unlike anything else. It's glossy, jet black, and slow-moving, and honestly, it looks more like a miniature alien than a bug. Adults can reach over 5 inches long and weigh more than a mouse. But despite its intimidating size, it's harmless, eating only plants and moving gently through the night, kind of like a living sculpture. What made this rediscovery so extraordinary was just how fragile the population was. Fewer than 30 were found, but thanks to a careful breeding program, that number is now in the thousands. Scientists even cracked its reproductive habits, something that had stumped entomologists for years. These insects pair up monogamously and form surprisingly strong bonds, staying together in shelters and even grooming one another. Today, their descendants are being prepared for reintroduction to Lord Howe Island, now that conservation efforts have removed the rat population. It's honestly one of the most dramatic comeback stories in insect history, from presumed extinction to the brink of recovery, all thanks to a moonlit climb and a single unlikely shrub on a rock in the sea. Its howl sounds like something straight out of a horror movie. Eerie, high-pitched, rising and falling like a haunting melody through the jungle. The New Guinea singing dog once roamed freely across the mountains of Papua New Guinea, but by the 1970s it was considered extinct in the wild. A few existed in zoos and private collections, but no wild population had been seen in decades. Then, in the early 2000s, local reports of strange, dog-like howls led researchers into the remote highlands. In 2016, camera traps captured something no one expected: small, wild dogs with golden coats, pointed ears, and that unmistakable musical voice. DNA confirmed it. They had survived. These dogs are not like any other. Their vocalizations are incredibly complex, more like a whale's song than a traditional bark. Even trained wolves can't replicate the way they modulate pitch. That alone makes them unique, but their biology is just as wild. They're one of the most primitive dog species alive, with traits shared by the earliest canines. The rediscovered population showed signs of thriving. Packs were observed at high altitudes, hunting small prey and surviving in harsh alpine conditions that would challenge even the toughest animals. Their return wasn't just a surprise, it was a genetic goldmine. They hold clues about how dogs first evolved, how early humans may have interacted with them, and how canines adapted over thousands of years. Today, the New Guinea singing dog is under close protection. Conservationists are working to stabilize the population and carefully introduce zoo-bred individuals back into the wild to increase genetic diversity. Each echoing howl through the mountains is a signal they're still here, and they've got a song left to sing. On the volcanic island of Fernandina in the Galapagos, no one really expected to find life, let alone a creature thought lost for over 100 years. The terrain is brutal: black lava flows, jagged ridges, and searing heat. It's honestly one of the most inhospitable places in the region. Yet in 2019, a team navigating the lava fields discovered something astonishing: a lone female tortoise tucked beneath the brush. The Fernandina giant tortoise had been declared extinct since 1906. The discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific world. How had this massive reptile, nearly 200 pounds, with a domed shell and deep, ancient eyes, evaded detection for over a century? She was dehydrated and covered in mud, but very much alive. The tortoise was named Fernanda, and genetic tests confirmed what many had hoped: she belonged to the lost species Chelonoidus fantasticus. It was one of the rarest animal discoveries in modern history. Tortoises from the Galapagos are already legendary. Darwin himself studied them, but the Fernandina species is different. It's a highland survivor living in extreme isolation and feeding on sparse vegetation in an almost alien landscape. The rediscovery opened up a flood of new questions. Were there more? Had others survived in hidden corners of the island? Since then, expeditions have returned to Fernandina to search for tracks, droppings, even trails in the volcanic soil. Hope remains that Fernanda isn't alone. But even if she is, she represents something powerful, the idea that nature still holds its secrets close. The Galapagos has long been a place of evolutionary miracles. But honestly, few stories match this one, a creature believed gone for generations, standing once again beneath the shadow of an active volcano, defying extinction with every slow step. For over a century, it was just a rumor with wings. Wallace's giant bee, first discovered by British naturalist Alfred Russel Wallace in 1859, was considered extinct for decades. No one had seen a living specimen since 1981. At 4 times the size of a regular honeybee, it was dubbed the flying bulldog, a creature so massive it almost sounded fictional. But in 2019, deep in the Indonesian islands, a team of researchers stumbled across a termite mound inside a tree. Inside it? A single colossal bee with jaws like garden shears. Wallace's giant bee was back, and it looked even more unbelievable than the legends had suggested. This bee is a true outlier in the insect world. It can grow over 1.5 inches long with a wingspan that rivals a hummingbird's. Its mandibles are huge, designed for gathering sticky resin and chewing through wood. It doesn't build typical hives. Instead, it nests inside active termite mounds, stealing their space and using the resin to line its chambers for protection. What makes its rediscovery so incredible is how little we still know about it. Even now, no one is quite sure how many survive. They're rarely seen, even in areas where they live. And their secretive behavior, combined with deforestation, has kept them hidden from science for decades. Finding it again wasn't just about checking a name off a list. It was about reminding the world that even the rarest, strangest creatures can survive against the odds. Wallace's giant bee isn't just big, it's a symbol of how much remains unknown in the wild. In a time when pollinators are disappearing at an alarming rate, this one came back from the shadows, loud, buzzing, and very much alive. The Bermuda petrel, also known as the kahow, vanished so completely from the Atlantic that it was thought extinct for over 300 years. Early sailors hunted it relentlessly, and invasive species like rats and cats wiped out its nesting grounds. By the 1620s, the bird had vanished, a ghost among seabird legends. Then, in 1951, a small group of researchers led by David Wingate discovered something no one expected. 18 nesting pairs clinging to survival on a few rocky islets near Bermuda. The kahow hadn't disappeared. It had been hiding in plain sight, surviving in secret. These seabirds are small but powerful. With a wingspan around 3 feet, they can glide for thousands of miles over the ocean, only returning to land to breed. Their cries, long, mournful wails, once filled the Bermuda night skies, earning them a haunted reputation. Their rediscovery launched one of the most ambitious seabird recovery programs in history. Conservationists built artificial burrows, guarded the nests from predators, and used solar-powered sound systems to lure young birds back to safer nesting areas. And it worked. From just a few dozen individuals, the kahow population has slowly climbed into the hundreds. The bird's flight pattern is fast and low, cutting across the sea like a phantom. Today, it's still one of the rarest seabirds in the world. But now, its future is no longer just a fading memory. It's a real comeback story in motion, soaring high above the Atlantic again. It was called extinct. Twice. The black-footed ferret, North America's only native ferret species, vanished from the wild by the late 1970s. Habitat loss and disease had wiped them out, along with the prairie dogs they relied on for food and shelter. Biologists mourned its loss, and then, in 1981, a Wyoming ranch dog dropped a strange, weasel-like animal on a porch and rewrote the story. That discovery led scientists to a tiny surviving population near Meetitsa, Wyoming. Suddenly, hope was back on the table. Conservationists rushed to capture the remaining animals and launch an emergency breeding program. It was the last chance, and it worked. Black-footed ferrets are sleek, stealthy hunters with distinctive black masks and paws. They're about 18 inches long, quick as lightning, and incredibly elusive. At night, they prowl underground tunnels hunting prairie dogs. They're silent, fierce, and oddly charismatic. The breeding program grew from just 18 individuals to over 1,000. Slowly, reintroductions began across states like Montana, South Dakota, and Arizona. But it hasn't been easy. Disease still threatens their fragile numbers, and without prairie dogs, they can't survive. yet they're holding on. In fact, in 2020, a breakthrough came when scientists cloned a black-footed ferret named Elizabeth Ann from the frozen cells of a long-dead individual, opening a new path for genetic diversity in the wild. That's not science fiction, that's real conservation science, bringing back a species from the brink using frozen DNA. Today, spotting a wild black-footed ferret is a rare reward, even for seasoned wildlife trackers. But every time one pops its head out of a burrow, it's a reminder that extinction doesn't always have the last word. With its twitching trunk-like nose, furry body, and lightning-fast legs, the Somali sengi looks like a cross between a mouse and a mini anteater. It had been missing for over 50 years, last seen in the 1970s and presumed extinct ever since. But rumors persisted. Locals in Djibouti spoke of a tiny, elusive mammal darting through the rocks. Scientists listened. In 2019, a group set up peanut-baited camera traps in remote desert outcrops, and there it was. Alive, curious, real. The Somali sengi was back. This isn't just another rodent. Sengis are more closely related to elephants than to mice. Their long snouts are constantly moving, sniffing out insects hiding under stones. They zip across the terrain on spindly legs, capable of running at surprising speeds. And despite their size, they're incredibly intelligent, with a memory sharp enough to recall complex paths to food and safety. What makes their rediscovery so special is where it happened, one of the hottest, driest places on Earth. It had been written off as a wasteland for species like this. Yet the sengi had quietly adapted, using rocky crevices for shelter and feeding on beetles and ants in the early morning hours. The team that found it didn't just snap photos, they confirmed that it was genetically unique, distinct from its close relatives and deserving of protection. The rediscovery also inspired renewed interest in the Horn of Africa's biodiversity, which had been underexplored for decades. The Somali sengi is proof that even in the harshest environments, life finds a way, and that sometimes it does it with a twitching nose and surprising speed. For more than a century, the night parrot was considered one of the rarest and possibly extinct birds in the world. Found only in Australia's dry, desolate outback, the last confirmed sighting was in 1912. After that, it disappeared into legend, becoming the bird-watching equivalent of Bigfoot. Then in 2013, everything changed. A wildlife photographer in Queensland managed to capture photos of a small green parrot darting through the scrub. A year later, researchers confirmed the find. Nesting evidence, calls, even feather samples. The night parrot was real and it was back. This bird is a master of stealth. It lives in spiky clumps of spinifex grass and only moves at night. Its camouflage is near perfect. Bright green feathers speckled with yellow and black, blending into the desert like a ghost in the sand. Even experienced field biologists have walked right past it without realizing. Its nocturnal habits and remote habitat made it nearly impossible to study. But now, using motion-triggered cameras and audio recorders, scientists are piecing together its behavior. The parrot feeds on grass seeds, rarely flies, and communicates with a soft, whistling call that carries on the wind. Since its rediscovery, strict measures have been put in place to protect its habitat. Sightings are still rare, but they're no longer impossible, and each one feels like catching a moment from a dream that was once thought gone forever. The night parrot's return is one of the greatest avian comebacks ever recorded. A reminder that even the most mysterious creatures can sometimes find a way to survive, if we're just patient enough to listen for their call in the dark. For years, it was mistaken for something else confused with Bride's whales, or misidentified entirely. Omura's whale, one of the world's rarest and most mysterious marine mammals, was only confirmed as a distinct species in the early 2000s. And yet, despite its massive size, up to 40 feet long, it had gone unnoticed in plain sight. The reason? It lives in some of the most remote and least studied waters on Earth, including parts of the Indian Ocean and the Western Pacific. It's sleek, with a sharply pointed head and a unique asymmetrical jaw, one side light, the other dark. These whales glide silently beneath the surface, surfacing only for brief moments, leaving barely a ripple. Then in 2015, scientists working off the coast of Madagascar captured the first confirmed video footage of live Omura's whales. What they saw was mesmerizing, a pod of these streamlined giants, slowly circling and feeding in crystal clear water. Not just one individual, but a group. These whales hum at ultra-low frequencies and are believed to live in small family units, far from shipping lanes and human activity. Their rediscovery didn't just add a species back to the map, It reminded researchers that even giants can vanish in a blue ocean, unseen until someone looks just right. Large, brightly colored, and unmistakably prehistoric, the South Island takahe was thought extinct by 1898. Native to the rugged alpine grasslands of New Zealand, it had fallen victim to hunting and introduced predators. For over 50 years, the bird was declared gone, until 1948, when a small expedition to the remote Murchison Mountains changed everything. There, in a hidden valley no one expected to yield anything, searchers saw a bird nearly 2 feet tall, deep blue and green feathers, and a bright red beak. It moved slowly, heavy-footed, unmistakably real. The takahe had survived. Since then, it's become one of New Zealand's most iconic conservation stories. Breeding programs, predator-free sanctuaries, and relocation efforts have helped rebuild its population from fewer than 200 to over 500 birds. That might still sound small, but for a bird once vanished from the world, it's a comeback worth celebrating. Takahe don't fly. They walk, they graze like sheep, and they raise their young with fierce devotion. They're slow-moving but full of personality, like nature's awkward, beautiful underdogs. And thanks to decades of careful conservation, they've stepped out of myth and back into the high country. From deep oceans to volcanic islands, these creatures defied extinction and returned from the edge. Each rediscovery is a reminder the wild still holds secrets, and some of the rarest animals on Earth are out there, alive, surviving, and rewriting what we thought we knew. That's about it. Which of these animal comebacks shocked you the most? Write in the comments, and don't forget to check out our other videos.